Welcome, everyone. You are attending GIS After Dark. This is our monthly meeting that takes place. It's hosted by the Advanced Academic Program at Johns Hopkins University. And I am the program director in the GIS, which is the Geographic Information Systems program at Johns Hopkins. The program itself, just to talk a little bit about the program, it's a fully online Master's in Science program that focuses on applications of GIS. And so we have a wonderful presenter with us tonight, which is a Hopkins alumni. I'll be introducing her shortly. We will have opportunities after tonight's presentation for questions. So any questions that you have during the presentation, I will be monitoring the chat as well as the Q&A tab. So if you have any questions for our presenter, feel free to put those questions in the chat or Q&A options. But before we get started, because it's geographic information, I'm always curious about where people are joining us from. So this is your first challenge. Go ahead and please click on the chat box and enter the state or city, whatever, or country of where you are joining us from. Go ahead and put that in the chat. Right, excellent. Baltimore, Apple Valley, Minnesota, excellent. Nice geographic extent. We've got Virginia, Santa Fe. Excellent. Well, welcome. Okay, so now you guys know where the chat box is. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put your questions in the chat box. And I'm just actually curious for folks that are joining tonight. So this is a speaker series that really brings together practitioners in the field of GIS. And as you will learn tonight, GIS is a tool that's used in many different disciplines. And I'm just curious, for those that are joining us tonight, who in the group is learning about GIS for their first time? Okay, so maybe just say first time GIS, or you could say GIS user. So go ahead in the chat and we'll see who's a first time GISer or a practitioner of the GIS discipline. And thank you. We just launched a survey, so you can go ahead and share with us your level of experience. So you have your options of GIS expert, familiar with GIS, new to GIS, and no background in GIS. So go ahead and put in your answers, and we will close that survey in about 5 seconds, and we'll see who the background experience of those attending tonight's session. Okay, excellent. So we have 31% of attendees are GIS experts, 31 are familiar, which is great. 19% are new to GIS, welcome. And no GIS background whatsoever. Again, welcome. You are amongst good company. We're happy to have you here. Okay, so just for those that are completely new to GIS, let's talk a little bit about what GIS is and the value that GIS has. So GIS is made up of, it's an acronym that's known as the Geographic Information Systems. And it is the collection that allows for us to collect geospatial information and make simple maps or apps. And the whole point of this is to represent the world that we know and what we want to learn from. And the one thing that's so powerful about GIS is that it's used for data collection, analysis, map creation, as well as app uses and evaluations. And so as GIS practitioners, we're always wanting to know the what, the when, the where, the hows of our geospatial world. And we've seen GIS leveraged on various different levels throughout the last couple of years, more so, with the existence of the COVID dashboard. And we saw that how COVID data, the visualization of that dashboard could be used on a global scale as well as federal, state, and local. So we know that GIS is extremely important and allows for us to make decisions and use the data in various visualization and analytic tool sets. And I just wanted to share with you guys some of the uses that our students in the past have put to use their GIS data in the form of beautiful maps and applications that were created in one of our GIS elective classes, which is cartography. And so it's a proud teaching moment for me to highlight our students' work. And you'll see some of their work highlighted at local conferences on the state and also federal level. So with that said, I am so honored to welcome tonight's presenter, Farrah Solomon, who is a GIS analyst and has over 7 years of experience on all different aspects of GIS, from ArcGIS Pro to ArcGIS Online Technology. She comes to us with so many different skill sets, and I do want to kind of coin you as the MacGyver of GIS, where give Farrah any type of software or any type of problem, and she will solve that problem. And I think that's one of the fundamental goals for any GIS analyst or specialist, is to have that skill set. So Farrah, thank you so much for being here tonight. I know that you will be sharing with us a very particular project looking at homelessness point in time for the county that you work for, and you're gonna lift up the hood of your apps that you're building, and we're gonna kind of dive into your workflows. So thank you for being with us tonight. I am going to stop presenting and turn over the sharing powers to you. Let me find my screen here really fast. So I'll stop presenting. So before Farrah gets started, let's give her a virtual round of applause. So as I mentioned, she is a Hopkins alumni. She graduated in 2022, and she went down the ESP GIS dual graduate path. And so she is here to share with us the wonderful work that she is doing in Carroll County. So Farrah, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me and inviting me to talk. I really am honored to come back and share my knowledge with other GIS students and other people of the public, and just really excited to be here.
Yay, welcome. The floor is yours, and we want to learn from you and hear all the amazing things you guys are doing.
All right, so I'll be presenting on one of the solutions that I've been working on at Carroll County government. It's called the Homelessness Point in Time Solution, and it's a solution that ESRI had put out not too long ago. And so I wanted to kind of give you a glance at implementing the solution and kind of what it entails. So a little bit of background about Carroll County. Carroll County is part of the Baltimore metropolitan area. It is governed by 5 commissioners, the government, and the county has 8 municipalities. So where Carroll County is situated is kind of like off to the west, but not too far west. Oops, sorry. So the northernmost border is touches the Pennsylvania border, and then to the west we have Frederick County, to the south we have Howard County, and then to the east we have Baltimore County. And then you can kind of see that Baltimore City is right, below here. So Carroll County is made up of about 68,000 residents, and the landscape is mainly rural and agricultural. So they're still in the process of really working on developing and bringing new stores and everything out there, but it's mostly rural and agricultural. So the scenario at Carroll County government is that we're in the process of trying to modernize our workflows. So we're trying to update things in the county and get maybe paper workflows to digital. And so with that, we also are trying to kind of merge our technology, since our technology wasn't really being fully utilized. So different departments had their technology, but they weren't really coming together and working in unison. So we're in the process of doing that at the moment. And so to help us with that, we reached out to ESRI, and ESRI has what we call this roadmap workshop. And what this workshop does is we can bring in varying departments to identify their needs, and they can voice their concerns and basically point out things that they need to have taken care of and maybe are not working correctly and things like that. So with the Citizen Services Department, which is where we implemented the solution at, their previous workflow consisted of paper surveys. They had a varying number of volunteers, so they didn't have a set number of people who came out for this event, and so they had to work with whoever volunteered, and so that could be interesting. And then when I got this information from the homeless, then they had to use 2 computerized systems to input the data just to generate their HUD report. So this was expressed to ESRI, and ESRI came back with a recommendation. And so at this point, I want to just give a quick shout out to Rob Hayward, who is our account manager, and Jess Smith and Ava Mackey, who are both solution engineers. And they helped us in general with the implementation of various solutions, but I just want to give them their shout out because they really gave us great suggestions and recommendations. And so what they recommended for citizen services was the homelessness point in time count solution. So implementing this and, not really knowing what it was presented many obstacles. And so the question was, how do we move forward? And so we were working against a tight deadline. We didn't really know what citizen services did in their, we call it pit count. So that's the point in time. We didn't know what they did in their pit count process. And then also the information being collected from the homeless individuals was sensitive. So we had to make sure it was protected. Also, as you'll see soon enough, when you open up an ESRI solution, it can be very daunting. It's very intricate. And so, I've never worked with the solution. So the question was, how do we implement these ESRI solutions? And then we're also working with staff and volunteers who either have very little or no knowledge of GIS, and they don't have their own GIS analyst in their department. And so that's another challenge that we had to look at. So looking at the time crunch, it was basically 2 months for us to meet with an ESRI rep. So we met with them November 22nd, 2022, and we deployed the solution on December 1st, 2022. And we had to get this kind of set up and almost perfect by the time that we started the trainings on how to do the pit count with the new technology. And that was for January 11th, 2023. And then from there, we had to make sure everything was running smoothly for the actual pit count to occur on January 24th, 2023. So I put the slide in here because one of the things when we design anything, whether it's an application for internal use or an application for public use, we have to keep in mind our audience. So if you're designing something for public use, make sure you know what the level of GIS is for your audience. And for internal staff, the same thing. So I know that there's a lot of fear of change, especially if you don't know GIS. And so the goal in designing anything is to really keep it as simple as possible so that everyone can use it very easily. Now, I want to go through the deployment pieces. I've broken it down into four parts. And even though this is centered around the survey, there are other components of the solution. And we're going to go over those later on, but I wanted to focus basically the workflow of how to deploy the survey or the solution, and then how to get it through Survey 123 Connect Desktop, how to get that application. And then on part 3, how to download the survey that has been deployed. And then part 4, we're going to look at how it looks in the hands of the volunteer. And then later on in the presentation, I'm planning to go over the other main components of the solution itself, which would be the dashboard and the HUD report. And we'll go into more details about that. So the first part, like I mentioned, is the deployment of the solution in ArcGIS Online. And I pre-recorded a video to show you that. So here you can see we go to the grid and we go down to the solutions icon, and this is in ArcGIS Online. Then in order to find the homelessness pit count solution, we're going to type in homelessness, and it's going to pop up with an icon, and we click that to view the details of the solution. Circled in red, I put is the deploy now option. And so that's where we would deploy the solution in ArcGIS Online. So when we deploy the solution, it basically creates a folder in ArcGIS Online. And then in that folder, you have many items listed. But one of the items is actually the homelessness, and I'm going to actually just point this out, is this item called the homelessness point in time counts. And what this item has is basically the description of your whole solution, what it's used for and everything. That's your metadata. And then if you want to learn more, you can click on the Learn More button. And I'm going to just show you, I'm going to show you guys very quickly. So when you click on the Learn More button, it's going to bring you to this page on the ESRI website that talks about all their solutions, but specifically you can hone in on the homelessness point in time count. And it tells you how to configure it and how to configure each component of it. And so if you're doing this for the first time, I would recommend always read about the solution, get familiar with the different components, and then if you need further help, reach out to ESRI for support. So when you scroll down on the item detail page in ArcGIS Online, you will, on the same page, you will see what is called the solution content. And the solution content is basically your map of the solution. It's how everything is interconnected to each other. And so as you can see, it looks pretty complicated and it takes a little while to kind of wrap your head around everything going on. So I'm just going to briefly go over some of the main components. The homelessness count feature layer here is the main one that your data basically is going to write to. So when you're out there, taking the surveys, this is where your data is going to be written to. And so you can see that it's the backbone of the solution, and it's featured in various components like the survey form, the HUD report, and the dashboard. Then you have your survey form, which we're going to get to, and that writes to the main feature layer I pointed out, and also a web map. Then you have your HUD report, and then you have your homelessness count dashboard. And so this actually uses a different web map that's within the solution. And this web map takes the main homelessness count and uses the join feature to join a table, a related table to it, and it feeds the information into the dashboard. So just to recap, we deployed this solution in December 2022, and we went live in January 2023. Now, the focus of the presentation, I went through the different components, the Survey 123 Connect form, and we're going to hit the dashboard, and we're going to go over the HUD report. The HUD report stands for Housing and Urban Development Report, and this is the report that local governments use to submit to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and that is a federal agency. And so this report is very important because this federal agency uses it to determine the allocation of funds from the federal government to states, cities, and counties. And this way, they different programs that the citizen services want to implement, they can write for these funds and they can get them allocated so that they can help support existing programs to help the homelessness population. So we're going to take an in-depth look of the Survey 123 Connect form. We already went through the first part, which was deploying the solution. So now the second part will be getting that Survey 123 Connect desktop application onto your computer. Then I'm going to go over how to access the deployed survey form, which is on ArcGIS Online, how to bring it to that desktop application. There's going to be a demo where I go over the Survey 123 Connect interface. And also, I'm going to show you the actual form, the XLS form that is used to build the survey. And then I'm going to just give you a demonstration of what it looks like in the hands of the volunteer. Afterwards, we'll do a quick glance at the dashboard component, and then we'll take a little quick glance, but I'm going to go over how to access and run the HUD report, and I'll just show you a sample of what it looks like when it's finished running. So the first question is, why do we use Survey 123 Connect form? And so this is the type of survey form that was used by the solution, but it has a lot of perks. And if you're not familiar with Survey 123, there's two different ones. There's the Survey 123 Web Designer, which is basically housed online. And it's like a drag and drop feature. It's somewhat flexible, but it's not very flexible in the sense of being able to customize certain things. But the Survey 123 Connect is. And so I'm suspecting that's why the solution used it, so that they gave you the more flexible design in case you want to modify and change things. And so this solution, since it came with a Survey 123 Connect form, it already had the questions that were required by HUD. And so it was very easy to implement this and just add in additional questions that maybe citizen services wanted to incorporate in their survey. Because they do sometimes ask additional questions, and maybe they have other programs that they want to track. So it was nice to be able to add in specific things that they requested. And so it was very helpful to be able to sit down with citizen services, go over the existing questions, and then find out what they wanted to have added in. So the first part of our part 2 here is to download Survey 123 Connect from the ESRI site. And I'm just gonna pop out of this presentation and show you where that looks like on the ESRI site. I think everyone can see this, yes. So here is the Survey 123 site, and it gives you a few download options of their various Survey 123 types. And so the one that you would want to get is Survey 123, and you get it from the Microsoft Store, and it would basically just download it, and it becomes an icon on your desktop, which looks like the one I have in my presentation. So I'm going to just go back to the presentation here. And so once you download the Survey 123 Connect from the ESRI site, then you're going to log in using your organization's, whatever it is. So I have my organization username and password for ArcGIS Online. It also can be downloaded to, you can also log in using your enterprise portal account. So once you do that, the surveys that are associated with your account are going to kind of pre-populate. And so what you would do is, since I already kind of have mine set up, you would click on the icon on the three dots and hit download. And then basically this now makes it accessible because it downloaded a hard copy to your desktop, and it created a folder, and now you can start working with it. This is kind of the opposite workflow for if you were to create a new survey, which I'll go over in the live demonstration in a second. But since the solution comes with a survey, this is how you would get to the survey in ArcGIS Online and bring it to your computer. So I'm going to pop off of this presentation, and I'm going to go through how to once again access the survey, and then kind of go over the interface and let you kind of see under the hood. So just give me 1 second to set that up. So here is what the Survey 123 Connect looks like. And here's my 3 dots, and I would download it, which I have already downloaded it from ArcGIS Online. And so if you wanted to create a new survey, you would click this button and you would create a new survey. I probably shouldn't have clicked it because it's kind of takes a little while, but you can kind of see here how you can use a blank form, and it gives you 2 choices of a template. You can also search for existing surveys that are out there and bring them in and look at them and change them and modify them. So you have some options if you want to make your own survey. So I'm just going to click on that, and I'm just going to take you from the left panel to the bottom and then to the right. So starting with this interface, this is what I call like the preview interface. You see what you're building in this interface here. And as you can see, I have this, please enter a valid PIN number, which we'll get to later. And So if you want to open up the actual XLS form to view the survey and the questions and everything, you would press XLS form. I already have it up because it sometimes takes a while to load. So I preloaded it, but you can see here how it looks, it kind of like screams, ah, when you first see it, right? Because you're like, oh my God, what is all this stuff? So it does take a little bit of getting used to. And so I'm just going to go over the first three columns. The type column here, just you're just basically setting what your question, or if you're setting a note, what it's going to be. So this is your like your categories, I guess. So like this is a select one question where you pose a question and then you give it some options on the choices page for people to choose from. And so basically, this is how you build your survey. And you, in your name column here, this is a very important column, because as you're building your survey, you always have to keep in mind what you're putting in your table. So when you publish this, it's going to create your feature layer with a table. And so you're going to have these as your field names. And this is very important because you'll have to define the field names if you're bringing them over, and they'll have to match if you make any changes. So this is a very important column. And then this column here, excuse me, is the label column. And so basically, this is what the user sees. So my volunteers, when they open up the survey, these are the questions that they're going to see. Is the person in a shelter? So I'm just going to show you really quickly. When you design this, normally I would have my two screens, but since I'm sharing on one screen, I'm going to kind of squish it a little bit. And you can kind of see that you would have this up on one screen, and then you would have your survey up on another screen. And you would, you would write something like, is the person in the shelter? Now here's my question, and it's a select one. And as I move over to, oh, you can't see it because I squished it. As you move over to the right here, you can see that there's this column that says appearance, and I want this question to have a horizontal appearance for my choices. And so now my choices are horizontally laid out. And if I say yes, then another question shows up. And so, you know, this is how you build your survey. And so the next question is, what is the name of the shelter program? And I chose this minimal appearance for the options. And so what does that do? That gives you a drop down. And so as you're working with these settings and as you play with them, you start to understand how the spreadsheet translates into the survey form that you'll be sharing out to your users. And so there's some other, important details in here, like how to set something to relevant, where is it important enough to see or to be hidden? You could do calculations where you pull the data. That's how I have this pin set up, which we'll talk about later. And so, there's all of these different settings in here that you can use. And then as you get closer to these bind fields, these are the ones that if I was building my own survey, I would be customizing specific things in here, like my field type. And the same thing in ArcGIS Pro, when you're accessing your attribute table and you're going behind the scenes and looking at the field view. Well, these are the same things that are listed in that field view, your ESRI type, single, double, integer. And so you would specify what the field type is and then give it an alias, just like if you were ArcGIS Pro, and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of taste of what Survey 123 Connect form really looks like and what it takes to build a survey, because it's not as simple as it looks, but this does allow a lot of flexibility and a lot of customizations once you really get into the nitty-gritty of it. So I'm just going to go over a couple of other things that are in this interface that are kind of important. As you're saving on your XLS form, you could click update, or you could save, and that's going to update the questions as you build them out, and you can see them on this preview interface. And then you can access where your survey was downloaded to on your computer. So you would access the file here. And this is like the most important button, the publish button. So once you're done with your survey, you click the publish button, and that pushes it out to ArcGIS Online, or if you're working in Portal, that pushes it out to Enterprise. And so this is like the next step after you finish your survey to get it to your users, your end users. And then you have these three buttons here, and this is important because this shows you where the QR code is, where you can open it up and manage some additional settings, and how to view it in ArcGIS Online. On the bottom here, we have this interface is called Form. And then you can go to details and set up your metadata and things like that. In your map, which is kind of nice, this little feature, you can zoom in to where, if your users are going to be dropping a pin someplace, well, instead of them defaulted to California, you can have it defaulted to Maryland or wherever it is that you're working, the area that you're working in. So it's kind of nice, makes it easier for your end users. Here is where you can link external documents to. So I have a CSV that contains a pin that my survey form pulls from to verify, is this the correct pin or not? And so this is very useful, not just for something like this, but for other things, to pull information into the survey and to populate it. And then you can pull not only external documents, but you can pull information from ArcGIS Online or ArcPortal and link it in your survey and have it show in various areas. And this is really important. So here I have the results layer, which the survey writes to, and then I have the web map where the results layers is hosted in. And then a really cool feature that I absolutely love is this Bezel feature. And the Bezel feature allows you to preview your survey on different screen sizes, monitors, mobile devices. It's wonderful. So if you want to look at it on a smartphone, well, there you go. Now you can look at it and see how your survey design shows up on a smartphone. If you want to look at it on a laptop, there you go. So it really allows you to test how your survey design is looking like on different mobile devices and on a regular desktop computer. And then lastly, we have here, well, second to lastly, we have here where you customize your themes. So I have my organization colors in here. But if you're working for a specific organization, they might have specific colors that you use, especially if your survey is going to be public. And so this is the area that you would change that and customize it so that it fits your organization theme. And then you press this little button here and it resets your survey back to the original view so that you can come in here and retest everything. So this is a sort of brief overview of Survey 123. And so you can see that it's pretty overwhelming at first, but as you get used to looking at the spreadsheet and understanding the different components, you'll realize that it does get easier. And so ESRI has documentation on the XLS form, because the XLS form is a form that's not ESRI ESRI didn't put it out, but they use it. And it's considered an open standard. So they use a lot of components from the XLS form. However, they also provide you a link to the actual site, which you can see here. And I open it up here, that goes into more in depth of the type of format, questions, formulas, anything that you're interested in working with. This really kind of breaks it down and gives you those tools and information to really start getting into the nitty-gritty of it. Here. So once you've finished building your survey and you've published it to ArcGIS Online or Enterprise of your choosing, then we put it into the hands of the volunteers. And so, as I showed you before, this could be a cell phone, this could be a mobile device, this could be pretty much whatever it is that you designed your survey to be on. And as you see on the right here, as I'm going, I go fairly quickly through the survey, but you can see how when I choose certain questions, certain ones appear. The survey only shows the relevant questions. And it has some calculations. So for when we get to it, the date of birth, it's going to calculate the person's age automatically. So these are, that was a specific customization that we actually put in with ESRI's help. And so it just goes through the typical questions that HUD requires, but then it also goes through some other questions that Citizen Services really wanted to know. And so we're actually coming upon that. So these questions here are specific to Citizen Services. They provide Narcon kits, which is really great. And so as you go through this survey, you can see that it's very efficient. It can save time because of the relevant questions that it shows. And so because of that, it could allow for the user to reach more homeless individuals. And since some of these homeless individuals maybe are not at an address, they may be in the woods someplace, you can use a device's location for the GPS, drop the pin, and you don't have to worry about, oh, I need an address. Now we have GPS coordinates. And it was funny because a few weeks ago, one of the people I work with at Citizen Services said, hey, could we have these GPS coordinates? Because, you know, they do circle back sometimes to these places to maybe provide services or help for those individuals that they've encountered. So it is really important to have that feature. So moving on, this is the dashboard, and I'm in the process of potentially redesigning it, but the whole point of it is that it's very out of the box. We did very minimal customizations. And so the goal of this is to be able to monitor incoming surveys as they're being taken. And then to also at the same time protect the individuals, the homeless individual's sensitive information. So all of this information is really nondescript. So you can't identify a homeless individual. And then, you know, if one of the commissioners are curious, they can use this dashboard and they can see, you know, stats right off the bat and have an idea of how many homeless individuals are, for example, sheltered or unsheltered. So it's a very good way to quickly look at information and maybe even use it for future measures. And then we have the HUD report. So the HUD report, like I said to you before, is a really important document. And it's really nice that within this ESRI solution, they provide what we call a notebook, which is Python based. And we're going to see a live demonstration of that, well, pre-recorded demonstration. And so basically what you see here is they have instructions, and with the instructions, you just basically follow the instructions. They make it super, super easy. And so like part one, you just put your cursor in here and you click run and boom. And because it's a little bit time consuming, I just kind of paused the video. And then when it got to the done, I said, okay, it's done, because it can take, this part can take a little while. But as you can see, it uses Python 3 script. And once it hits this done, then you can move on to the next part. And so basically this piece here is where the report is taking the information from the survey and everything online, and it's populating those fields in an Excel sheet, and it's going to give you the output of an Excel sheet, which is your HUD report. And so this was beautiful. I mean, we're talking about seconds, okay? Maybe the top 5 minutes of running a HUD report that, remember, Citizen Services was taking like days, if not weeks, to do after their last survey was done. And so I have 2 quotes here from the 2 people that I worked with on this project. And so Daniel Yates, She's the Bureau Chief of Housing and Community Connections, and she says, having the HUD report automatically generated has saved us days. Instead of having to manually compile and input survey data into our homeless management information system, it now takes only a few minutes to download. So it's a real game changer for them. Celine Steckel, Director of Department of Citizen Services. This has really been a time saver for our department. So you can see that these individuals were like super happy to have the solution implemented and to be able to just have this output of an Excel sheet with all the HUD data that they needed was just perfect for them. And they were really appreciative and really just thrilled to be able to implement the solution in their future pit counts. So before I wrap up, I just want to go through a couple of future plans that we're looking at. In my presentation, you saw the pin. So this pin lock, as I call it, we didn't use it in January 2023. This is actually something that's going to be utilized in January 2025. And so the idea is that since we don't know how many volunteers come out yearly to do this pit count, the idea is to make this survey public, but have it locked, and then secure the data on the back end so that no one can access the sensitive data. And then I showed you where the QR codes can be accessible. Well, those QR codes, we can email those to the volunteers the day or the day before the survey, and they can have it on their mobile devices or bring it up on an issue tablet. And so this just makes it even simpler, where they can have a way to access the code. They can enter the PIN in that will be emailed to them. And we don't have to worry about how many people are using the survey and if we have enough users or whatever. In ArcGIS Online, it's public, but secured. And so the idea is that they would put a pin in. If they put an incorrect pin, this is what they would see on their device. And if they put a valid pin in like this, then it opens up the survey and now they could take the survey. And so there was a process to secure the results. And that was something that we consulted with ESRI about, because, you know, when you open up the survey publicly, anyone can access your results. So you have to be very mindful of that and understand that, you know, you have to secure the data. So we went through these steps to secure the data. And I point this out because I don't know how many of you are familiar with view layers, but in ArcGIS Online, you can create these view layers where you specify different fields you want people to see and so on and so forth. And then you can just create it and save it as a view. Unfortunately, with that, the survey has to have all the fields shown. So you can't just hide sensitive information because the survey has to write to it. So the only way to do this is not through ArcGIS Online, is actually through Survey 123 website. And so I point this out because you can easily create a view layer on ArcGIS Online, but you never think that you can create a view layer through Survey 123 website. And so when you do that through Survey 123 website, you also have to manage the privileges, the sharing privileges in Survey 123 website, which means that you can't go back to ArcGIS Online and say, oh, I want to fix some privileges or edit or whatever. You don't want to mess with it in ArcGIS Online. You only mess with it in Survey 123 website because, you know, it sets the privileges and it keeps your data secure. And so I pointed out because it's something that we had to really get our mind wrapped around, because it was such a new concept that we were just like, what? There's another way to create a view layer? We were like, what's going on? So it's just a really important thing that you have to be mindful of. And so you can share through this site the results layer to specific individuals, to specific groups that you make and within the organization. So it's very specific. And then there's even a link that you can send to the individual. So you have the ability to keep it very secured and locked down, which is what you want, because you don't want those results out there. And so lastly, the future upgrade it was just going to be a big, not such a big overhaul, but it's going to be a big upgrade, which is to the new version of the Homelessness Point in Time Count Survey. And so HUD just came out with some new requirements that they wanted to see in their HUD reports. And at the time, ESRI had just released an update, and they didn't know that these upgrades, that the HUD wanted all of these changes. So they kind of just missed it, and they did a workaround for organizations doing the pit count in January of this year, but they're going to come out with a formal solution where they upgraded and everything, and in sometime in 2024. They haven't released it, but I'm estimating probably late summer, fall, where they're gonna include the additional things that the HUD wanted. And so I'll be working on basically redoing the solution into the new version and implementing those new changes that I spoke about into the new version of the solution. So that's going to be a little bit of a project, but I'm looking forward to it because it'll be nice to work and kind of go through setting up everything, because the more you set up these solutions, the easier it gets. So with that, thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to answering any questions that you may have. So yeah, definitely don't feel shy.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let's give Farrah a virtual round of applause in the chat. And I actually I have a couple questions for you, Farrah. Well, first off,
Yep.
congratulations to you and your team for creating
Thank
a
you.
wonderful solution. This is extremely powerful. And you can stop sharing your screen now if you want, so you don't have to share your desktop.
I know. I'm like,
but it's a very clean desktop, I gotta mention.
Oh, thanks.
A question that I had, and this is just kind of my ignorance with PIT data, is that at a point in time in like the month of January, or is it once a month, or what's the window of data entry?
So it's usually the second to last week, from what my experience is when they go out and they have a specific date. So like, I think in the pit count survey, it actually says in there, let me just quickly, because I can, it says specifically in here, like, where did you stay last night, January 23rd? So there's a date, because it's very strict guidelines as to like who is homeless and who is considered homeless and who is not. And so they use like in that year it was 2023, January 23rd, 2023. And so if the person stayed in either a hotel or stayed at someone's house, they might not be considered homeless. But if they stayed in like the woods or in their car, then they would still be considered homeless. So it's very date specific as far as that cutoff, but it is pretty consistent that it's usually the second to last week in January, and it's one day. And they take the way our citizen services department does it, because this is not across the board. They're a little bit unique in this, because they have people that are very familiar with the area. They will actually send the first group out just before dawn to go to certain places that might not be the safest, but because they know the area, they know the people, that they might have like a rapport. So they might go to those areas separately, and then they'll come back and they'll take the volunteers out when it's just hitting like 7 a.m. And they'll take the volunteers out to some of the more populated areas, and they'll do the pit count surveys there. So they actually go out in two different groups, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, definitely. That's an interesting workflow. So they could establish that rapport and relationship, solo or in a team. And then when they go out and collect that data, they're within a team. Interesting.
Yeah, they're in teams. They're always in teams, and they never go alone. And so that's why it's hard, because you have a number of volunteers, and maybe one person at that volunteer is doing the survey, or maybe two or three, but you don't know, and so that's why it's good to have it on a mobile device, so that if there happens to be like two people in the same area, well, some of the volunteers can go to that person and this person, and they have it on their mobile device. They can save time and interview the person. So it really works out, because they used to go out there with pen and paper and just ask these questions. And what happens if it's raining that day? You know what I mean? So it makes it even harder.
Right. Well, that's great that the workflow has been streamlined, and those HUD documents are so important, but are
They
very
are.
time consuming. So I love
Yes.
that, those quotations and kind of testimonials that you shared. So you have a couple questions coming in from current students within the program. So
Sure.
Susan wanted to know specifically what coursework or classes while you were at Hopkins, what did you take that helped provided you with the skills or direct experience with Survey 123 Connect?
Um, so I would say, I believe my intro course went over it, but I would just say that anything ArcGIS Online was like the best thing. And most of the courses at Johns Hopkins, they go through this workflow of ArcGIS Pro, publish, an application, push it up to ArcGIS Online, create an app, so that essential workflow is really important when you get out to the real world and you're in a job, because like our organization is trying to move desktop users, and we're trying to get into enterprise. And so that's the workflow that we're going to be teaching the people in our organization is, hey, like you have your layers in ArcGIS Pro, why don't you publish them up to ArcGIS Enterprise and then make your applications? Like, but we're already learning this in school, so that's perfect for when you're coming out and getting a job, and you can definitely pitch that in your interview.
Yep, absolutely. No, that's great. Also, Susan, in the summer GIS for emergency management, there's quite a bit of workflow on creating that survey and then taking that data and putting it in dashboards for disasters. So
And
another
that's
class to
really
think
good
about.
too. Yeah, I took that class. It was great. I highly recommend it.
Sorry, a self-promotional plug here for the courses.
No, I'll help plug.
Thanks,
It was one of my favorite classes. I was happy.
Oh, okay.
And my
Okay.
environmental ones too. Can't forget about you, Rachel.
So another question coming from Marco, which Marco, I was expecting a question from you tonight, so you did not disappoint. So question coming from Marco. First off, he said, great presentation. And he was curious to know on what challenges you and your team face when trying to track homelessness in real time.
So I personally don't go out, but I've talked to the staff there. And it's kind of interesting because you find out that there's encampments like that they don't have addresses. So one of the challenges was if they were using paper, how do you mark, an encampment that's in the woods? So having that GPS location to just be able to drop the pin and be able to send people to the coordinates of where this encampment is wonderful. Then you have to realize that we're spread out. Like Carroll County is huge and it's mostly rural and agricultural. So we have some shelters that people go to, but they might be underneath a bridge, or they might be, like I said, in an encampment or at a hotel. So having as many volunteers can really help that, but it's a challenge because I'm sure they have to promote that and stuff. So their volunteer numbers are not always consistent, and so I'm guessing that that's another challenge that they have. That's all I can think about right now, but I'm sure there's others. But those are the main ones. Yeah.
What was your experience like in training the volunteers? Was it fairly straightforward? I know as you start, it's one thing to teach something, but then all that feedback that comes in, it allows for you to kind of hone in and edit your craft even more so.
Yeah, so we were really lucky in having ESRI, the person I worked with, actually create videos for us. I actually will be creating new training material this year for 2025 pick count. But I did walk through a few things, and for the most part, they were pretty receptive because it it was just teaching them that, it's just a scroll down and clicking of, the questions and hitting that submit, and make sure you hit the submit. And I had a training where I walked through how to get with the person who was in charge of the volunteers, not with the volunteers, how to get the application on the tablet. And so sometimes training the staff is better than trying to train the volunteers right out, because they know their processes and procedures. And I did sit in all of their trainings, and they go over like the whole pick count and some of the rules and regulations, and then they kind of stuck, okay, now here's some new technology and this is how you use it. And so they seemed to do fine when I didn't have any complaints. we got the staff really, comfortable using it. They were playing around with it weeks before we introduced it to the volunteers. And I think that's really what helped, because then the volunteers could just ask a question to the staff member and they would have the answers. So I think that's kind of like the way to go. Train the staff and then have the staff train the volunteers.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you. I'm looking at the folks that are in the audience here, and I'm seeing a nice variety of current students that are GIS and ESP, so only GIS students, as well as prospective students.
Mhm.
And I was curious, what advice do you have for students that are starting to look for jobs, they're finishing up their degree? What advice can you give them?
Yeah, so I would really focus in on the skills that you learn in college, and definitely if you have that opportunity to get an internship, do that. It really doesn't matter where, just get an internship, because the same skills that you use there, you'll use eventually in the new job. So there's a lot of common workflows. And so if you can point those things out, like what I said to you, explain like the project that I had in Rachel's class where I was looking at contaminants, and actually the landslide one. Oh, push yourself to do the like to do something and put it on YouTube, because that's what I did. And I was able to list that on my resume and say, hey, I did this landslide susceptibility model and it's on YouTube, and why don't you watch it? So like really take advantage of your professors and pick their brains, and when they push you to like say, hey, you got a really good project here, why don't you do this, why don't you do it, because it's only going to serve you in the future and really help you. And so yeah, like internships, doing good projects in your courses, making sure that you highlight the common workflows when you go out into the interviews and they say, oh, can you tell me about a project? Make sure you talk about like ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS Pro, and how those things are connected and how you were exposed to them and things like that. So really kind of highlight those skills that you learn in school, and really try to reflect it in a project that you could say, and see, I applied these skills to a project. And that will really show whoever you're interviewing that you know your stuff, and that you can go out there and get data. You can go out there and manage a project. You can go out there and, use ArcGIS Online and applications, and, you have some knowledge. So yeah, I would recommend that.
That's great advice. So a couple more questions that are coming in. So Izzy, hi Izzy, how are you doing? Thanks for showing up tonight. So she wanted to know, is all counties required to go through this homelessness
Yes.
HUD report? So they're all required to do that. And not all
Yes.
counties are up to speed on this very
No.
fast Survey 123 process. So there's many job opportunities that are out there
Yes.
that counties are going to need help. So that's a great
Yeah.
question, Izzy. Yeah.
Yeah, it is
Then,
actually. Oh, can I just quickly say one quick thing?
yeah.
I
Yeah.
actually got at the Fed user conference, I got interviewed by two industry analysts, and they were really focused on the homelessness point in time solution that I worked on, and really picking my brain. And it was because another county was struggling to implement this, and they wanted to know, did you use drones? Did you use this? Did you use that? And so I was giving them like advice to give to other counties. So trust me when I tell you, it's really important.
That's great. And then Matt had a question for you. And then, he was talking about your Carroll County is collecting this data. How is this data being used to help support homelessness population in the county itself? Is it through policy changes, resource allocations? Like how are they going to be using the data that you guys are collecting?
So I'm not privy to the specific details, but I can tell you that they just used it last after the 2023 pit count. They used it to secure a bunch of grant funds. And so the state and the federal government, they have these funds out there for homeless individuals, and if they meet specific criteria, they can use this data to secure those funds to then funnel into programs. So it is very useful and it's very helpful.
Mm. And then Beatrice, she said, great presentation, Farrah. Do you have any advice for public speaking skills? And as you were presenting, I was thinking to myself, I see a future instructor. You are you wonderful job in your presentation and
Um,
communication.
I am always nervous. That has never left me, I can tell you that. But when you do a lot of them, I find that after the first couple of minutes, I do calm down and relax, and then it's like, whew, I got this. But I would just recommend, it's easier to present on material that you already know. So if you know your material inside and out, outside and in, because you worked on the project, you will have that confidence in yourself to present it. And any question that comes to you, you won't be afraid of it. And if you don't know the answer, you could say, I don't know the answer. I'll look into that. If you give me your contact information, maybe I can help you or refer you to an ESRI rep that could answer that question. But you learn these skills and over many presentations. So this isn't my first, but I've been doing it since on undergrad, and it's just practice and practice and practice and practice, and also confidence in the material that you know. If you know that material, then you'll be at ease when you present, because you'll feel like I'm showing people this, I'm teaching people this. You know, they want to hear what I have to say. So it kind of puts you in a different headspace.
And I will say the passion that you have for GIS and sharing the amazing work that your team's doing, it comes through in the presentation. So
Thank
having
you.
that kind of that sparkle in your eye and sharing your work is so wonderful. So I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to share what your team is doing, what you guys are doing. I know that the audience really welcomed all of your demos and the videos. And so I want to be respectful for the time tonight. But again, Farrah, thank you for presenting. And I feel like we'll hear more about your team's success in the future.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll see you at another conference in
yeah,
the future.
Hopefully so. I would love to see you guys.
Yeah, so folks that are attending tonight, let's give Farrah a round of applause. Joseph, thank you for being here tonight. John, thank you for being here. Yep. So again, be on the lookout for the next GIS After Dark. I know we're getting closer to summer. And I know folks like to take a break. So I think we'll be able to share with you the lineup for the fall. Adam, thank you for being here. Kevin, thank you. So everyone's saying thank you, Farrah. And again,
thank you, everyone.
Dr. Isaacs and myself, it's one of those proud moments where we get to sit back and see our graduates present. And we're so proud of you. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you so much for having me and appreciate it. And I'm so glad everyone enjoyed the presentation. I hope you guys have a great night. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Farrah. Take care, everyone.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.